I'm Kate Engler. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I'm here because I have visual snow and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. I've had visual snow for about a year and a half. That's when I first kind of noticed it. I was sitting in a lecture in college and I was looking at the whiteboard, and all of a sudden I noticed that it wasn't fully white. I kind of saw some blotches of, not like a black spot, it wasn't like blacking out in that spot. It was just really dark. So I noticed that and then made an appointment with my family eye doctor who did the eye exam. Everything was fine. He recommended me to an ophthalmologist who actually recommended that I get a spinal tap. He thought I had cranial hypertension. So that day I went in, got a spinal tap. Everything was fine. I got an MRI as well. Everything was clean, which is awesome, but it didn't really lead us to an answer. From there, I saw another neurologist who put me on a couple of different prescriptions with some really funky side effects, like being really dizzy, really confused all the time. I was always numb for some reason. And then I finally saw another doctor who was a neuro-ophthalmologist, and he had kind of drawn the conclusion that it was visual snow after a handful of different exams and tests of my eyes. But at the end of that appointment, he just said, well, let me know if you find any cures that work or treatments that help, and sent me on my way. It took a total of about 11 months for us to get to that final point there. And even from then, from that point, we didn't really have a solution moving forward. We just kind of knew, okay, here's what we think you have, and that was it. I think at that point, I was under the impression that it was a migraine still. So it was a persistent migraine with aura, without infarction. So in common speak, that means you have a migraine with a visual symptom, but you don't have any headache symptoms, and it's all the time. So at that point, he had recommended that I take magnesium to elevate the level of magnesium in my brain, which can help the threshold for a migraine. So I had started doing that probably 2 months ago, and with no result. It didn't really do anything, and it makes sense because visual snow is not a migraine. So yeah, I'll definitely be stopping that. But since then, I've just been doing a little bit more research, but there's not a whole lot out there. And especially after today's conference, I've learned that some of the information that is out there is not accurate. So I'll definitely have more moving forward, but getting that initial diagnosis was kind of like, okay, I have this condition, but I don't really know what to do with it. So as far as treatment goes, when I was still being treated as if this was a migraine, I tried a handful of different medications. One of them was venlafaxine, one of them was topiramate, which obviously those didn't help at all. I haven't really thought about treatment with the visual snow. I've almost accepted it at this point, like, okay, this is what I have, it could be a lot worse, so I think I'm just learning really to cope with it at this point. I haven't really considered treatment moving forward. How I see the world is basically through, if you had a screen of mesh, like a mesh grid in front of my eyes, pretty much anywhere I look, that's kind of what is filtering my vision, with some little sparkly dust particles throughout. And then also I have a lot of trailing images. So what that means is if I were to look at a light, if I were looking at you and there was a light behind you, and I close my eyes and move my head over here, I still see you and I still see the light, that same image. So whether that's a tiny light in the distance or a window, that pretty much follows me wherever I go. It goes away eventually, but it will stick around as long as I'm in this room with the lights. It'll still be here until I eventually leave, but as soon as one goes away, light's everywhere, so light will continue to do that. Visual snow affects my day-to-day life mostly when I'm driving. I rarely drive at night anymore. I try to avoid it at all costs because I get really scared and sometimes it will cause me to think I see things that I don't see, or maybe not see things that are actually there. It also affects my driving in the daytime just because things are not as clear as I would like them to be. So definitely reading street signs and looking long distance is a little bit more challenging. I would also say that it affects just my general focus throughout the day. I definitely get really distracted with all of the different light sources, and like when I'm sitting in a meeting at work, if the screen is in front of me and I have to turn and look at my boss, the screen kind of like traces around the room and it'll follow me, or if there's a white wall or something in the meeting room, it's kind of swirling around, it's not just still. So I definitely have a hard time focusing when it's kind of flaring up a little bit. I think the biggest misconception is that it doesn't exist. I think that for the first couple of weeks or months when I was explaining to my friends and family, they're like, "Are you sure your eyes aren't just dried out, or do you need contacts? Do you need to see the eye doctor?" I think that people have a hard time understanding when I tell them I can see, but I can't really see. So I think that's a huge misconception, is that it actually exists or not, and what that actually means. I think the thing that I'd want to tell the visual snow community, if you have it, just to try to continue on with your life. It can be very distracting, but by no means should you let it affect the quality of your work or the quality of your life. It can definitely be frustrating trying to diagnose it and thereafter trying to live with it, but just keep pushing forward, because I think we're getting a lot closer to a cure, especially with this meeting today and this foundation that we are starting. And to doctors, I would also say, just spread the awareness, because I talked to at least 5 doctors and I got a spinal tap, which was really painful, just to try to figure out the diagnosis. So I know that when we go back home, we have a bunch of the pamphlets. We're gonna give them to every doctor who I saw, who kind of led me to, oh, I don't know what this is, maybe go see that doctor, just to spread the awareness, because if I'm struggling with this, there's no telling how many other people might be struggling with it as well. I'm most excited after this conference because now I'm a part of a community of other people who suffer a condition like I have. So it's really nice to feel like I'm not alone and to actually know that I'm not alone. And I'm also really excited to be a part of the movement and the journey to really create that awareness and then do something about it. Because without patients like me or some of the other folks that I've met today, doctors don't have a lot to work with, so putting myself out there and my story out there if it can help even one person make a breakthrough, or help one person feel like they're not alone because they have this, then that's great. So I'm excited moving forward with the progress that we will make.